Welcome back, Tanglers. Well, this is really growing, isn't it? Today we're doing Tangles 23, 4, and 5. And our first one is Rus by Oswaldo Burbano, CZT. And I have to tell you, while I just ink out my crazy Huggins, this is where I'm going to put it today. I have to tell you, I absolutely fell in love with this tangle because way before I was a Zen Tangler, I was into weaving, knitting, spinning, all kinds of fiber arts. So anything with weaving in it is really good in my book. And this tangle is so amazing in that way. It's like this, it's like a weaving. So I am going to show you first what I did when I was just playing around with it. And then when we go ahead and do our crazy Huggins space, it might make a little bit more sense to you. So I really like it on the Renaissance colors too. So this is what I'm talking about. It's actually maybe less of a weaving and more of an overlap, which is also another one of my favorite compositional elements. We're going to do something more like this. And somebody did dots up here. I think it was Ava Wu I saw, and I just loved that concept and keeping this layer a little bit white to make it sort of look lacy. There's so many things you can do with this, and so that's where we're going today. But with this tangle, it's really important to get kind of even zigzags when we start building it. And in order to do that, I like to build a grid. And I build a grid often when I make these Charlie Brown zigzags, is what I call them. And that will help us keep that regular woven look more clear. So I'm going to go for about 1/3 each. Let's do this so that I kind of get it. And I'm doing this in pencil because we won't really see this. And as you can see, I'm bowing each of these with the given line over here. And you know, you could make it straight if it's easier for you. But once you get this, it's just so magical. All right, so now we want to divide this up. I think I will do this in fourths. And I'm going to sort of make this line go straight. They should be approximate squares. All right, something like that. And don't worry that, you know, these are larger because this is like a stretched Huggins, which is the beauty of this filling in the space that you are given. Let's start. What we're going to do, we're going to make Charlie Brown zigzags, and that's really super simple. I'm going to take my 01 black, and I'm just going to put a little dot in the middle. That's going to help me make my zigzag. And I'm going from this corner, I'm going to basically just make a triangle, connecting all of them. And I'm going to do this here. The point is we want this point and this point to line up. See, and all of the points should line up. So this one's getting wonky stretched, but you know, that's what's going to happen in our space, right? I think it'll still be all good. So the next step is we're going to take each of these peaks and we're going to extend a line. I would say about 3/4 of a way. This one's cut off, but I go up about 3/4 of the way to the next peak. And this is very much reminiscent of the tangle doodah, which we did, well, I did I didn't show you, but you can look up Doodah. It's by Zentangle. It's this one where we just alternate lines. It would go almost about 3/4 of the way up and then alternate. And we're going to do something similar here. Now we're going to turn our paper and we're going to do the same thing. And this one, you know, we'll just put in sort of partially. So here's our peak, right? It is kind of nice to have that guideline because we are trying to still follow that curve. That one would be here, there'd be one here. It kind of goes off the page. So that alone, if you shade that right, it's wonderful. But we're going to add yet another element to this, and that is these, I call them ghosts for lack of a better word. They're kind of like little caps. And we're going to start, let's start, I'm going to look at this as being the top. So I'm going to make a little cap with a flare. You have to come down a little ways, about halfway down. And you'll see why. Okay, now we're going to join that with yet another set of little ghosts, little caps. Don't they look like those stylized ghosts that you made in school? You could turn, and we're gonna join these little ghosty caps like that. But I find it easier, personally, to do it this way. And I'll show you. So, starting here, see, we want to join that little flare. It's like a little tab or a, if your little hook isn't long enough, just bring it down. So we're just acting like we know where we're going. This one would be the same thing. Okay, so here. That one got really long, but that's okay. This is elongatedly stretched. There we would not be able to join anything up. Here we can make that a little rounder and there. And then the point is here you would either fill this in black like I did here on my step out here. But I'm really liking what I did here. All I did was some line work because I just like the way the color of the paper is showing through. Here, I'm going to start out with line work. Here I did it black, but I'm going to start out with line work first. And if I don't like it, we can always fill in black. Well, I guess there's not a lot of room for line work. And what I want to do, which is not part of the step out, is I'm going to weight this, make little triangles here because that also gives us this illusion that these fabrics, these bands are woven into each other. Isn't that already so pretty? I just love this tangle. It's definitely going in my repertoire. And I am going to go ahead and turn this and do the same thing down here. Now, I can see this really well, and I think with shading, if you just shaded it with graphite, it would show up really well. But I want to really distinguish between the two different woven bands going on by doing every other band a different color. So basically 2 colors. Let's start with our shading. We're going to do kind of a grisaille shading. That is where we put the shading under our color if we put color on top. And the shading would go always along this tab on either side. See, it kind of goes along with this where the tab would have woven down into that other piece. And then I'm going to blend that. If you have too much on your tortillon, what you can do is pull it down into this crevice, this little blackened hole, kind of like little tongues, right? Before I go any further, I'm going to erase my grid lines where they're getting in the way. Makes everything a little bit cleaner. Probably should have done that before I started shading. Since this is so tightly woven, I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and do a little bit of lifting, because we can always accentuate that with our colored pencils. Okay, so that's looking pretty good to me. At least we know where the shading would go with our colored pencils. Now I'm going to lift the bands from each other by using my brown ochre. And let's make this one, this tab, okay, this little ghosty. I'm using a light touch with my colored pencil, and then this one where the tab comes down here would be, we're just going to leave that, and now we're going to use this row again in our brown ochre. So every other row will be colored. This line went up a little bit too far, but oh well. And then I'm going to take my light umber, and where that shading is, I'm going to just go over that a little bit. So we kind of cover up the graphite with our colored pencil. That's called our grisaille. I do lots of tutorials where we use this technique. It's a botanical illustration technique. I'm going to put a little bit down the center line, just on these colored tabs. A bit more of my lighter color on places that got lost. Okay, now I'm going to blend. You could actually also add white on these little tabs here at the top, but I instead am going to do that on the alternating tabs. Let's try this. You can try it with either your colored pencil or with the General's charcoal. Mainly doing it on the tops of the tabs. Yeah, this line is way too far up, but that was one of those kind of hard ones where you had to think about it. Okay, so then we're going to take our gel pen, our white gel pen, and we're going to put a row of little dots right below the peak line, like that. And what I did also on my sample, I put dots at the end of each of these tabs, tongues, whatever. I'm sure you can think of other things these look like. But I love them. There's a material that was popular in the 70s that this is reminding me of. It was kind of an ikat weave, where where you pull some of the warp threads to create this kind of zigzag in your cloth, and it was often in like blues and rainbow colors, but it's reminding me of that, strangely enough. And if you need to, you can also go back over some of these lines just to bring them back up. And now we're going to do our shading for the Crazy Huggins. And I'm going to take graphite for that, even though I probably, as a botanical illustrator, would go over the top of this with something brownish, dark brown. But since we're doing all of our Crazy Huggins with graphite, we'll stick to that. And then I'm going to take my brown ochre and color this also. Just kind of calms it down a little bit, just melding that so it is going into the tooth of the paper. If you want to get really crazy, you can by adding in a little bit of the light umber and then a little bit of sienna brown. Just look how that adds, just a hint adds so much. Not even being very thoughtful about it. I'm just hitting it up here and there just to give it a little bit of warmth in that pattern and to pull in these colors over here. I am so in love with this new tangle. I'm so glad that I'm taking the time to do Inktober Tangles this year. So now we're ready to move on to day 24, a beautiful tangle from Heidi SK called Flut. And when I first looked at the Flut step out, look at my tangle tag, I thought, oh my, this is really complicated. I don't know if I'm going to be able to wrap my brain around this. But if you do this by turning your tangle in each time you work in the quadrants with either the orbs or the flux-shaped leaves, you will find a rhythm that is wonderful, that's very zen. And this also has the possibility of doing so many different variations that you can just fall in love with it. So I'm just doing a quick quadrant here in my pencil because it's a string, and then we will start. So we're going to consider this top left, bottom right quadrants, and I will talk about those. So the first thing that we want to do is in the top left quadrant, right there in the center, make an orb. Turn your paper. I'm turning mine left counterclockwise. You do the same thing here. Turn. And turn. And then we're back at the start. And what I like to do on this is, I like to note that this is my orientation. That's how I started. So that's number one. Now we're going to go and put orbs opposite each of those, which we don't really need to turn our paper for, but you can. So you would go here, it's at the top, and we're back to the start. So now we have these reflecting orbs in each of these quadrants. And now we're going to start adding our flex leaves. So number one, we're going to start up here, go almost to the, well, do go to the center or to the edge, turn our tile, same thing. I could have made that one a little bigger, but we're back at square one. Now for the next step, we're going to go move down to the quadrant right side, and we're going to do the same thing. These are those other orbs. So you're always doing the same stroke. Same orientation, the same hand. So it's really, really quite easy and very soothing. If you practice it enough, you don't even think about it anymore. It's just comes. So number 3 is a floppy-eared rabbit. Like that. Turn. Floppy-eared rabbit. And we're back to the start again. And now we're going to do the same thing down here. Yeah, same thing. So here we start down at the bottom right. So the beginning we always start up at the top left, and then our other reflective orbs are handled starting at the bottom right. So floppy-eared rabbit. And then we're back to the beginning. Now comes what looked to me like the hard part, but it's really not that hard. If you follow, we're going to make triangles behind each of these. And we're going to start at the top left like we always do. And we're going to make a quadrant following along that line. I mean a triangle. Like that. So we're going to have some overlap. That's what the beauty, again, this is weaving and flowers, 2 things that are good in my book. So we're going to do that again. Same exact stroke, but since we turned our tile, we're going to get this look, you'll see. Don't go all the way to the top like I just did, just about 3/4 of the way. And we're back at the beginning again. And then you aura the line from the inside. It's so easy if you do this turning method. And then Heidi also suggests you could stop here, or you can add yet another triangle, in which case we would add that would start at the bottom right? Don't have to turn anything. So our second set of triangles would start here. Actually, before I do that, what she suggests is doing the 3rd flux leaf down here, going behind that triangle like that, so that we have that overlap. So before I go in and do that second step, we would go like this. And then we have that hollowbah effect where the leaves, the flux leaves, are kind of weaving in and out. And I just think this is so pretty as is. I really wouldn't, I'm not going to from my piece over here. I don't want to put another set of triangles, but if you did, you would start down here, turn your paper, do it again. And then on her step out, Heidi blackens in that negative space in those triangles like this. Or you can just use line work if you'd rather. So then you really see those overlaps with the flux. So by filling in this negative space, either with line work like this, hatching, or with full on black saturated color, or whatever color you choose, you really get to see what's going on better. See how this reads a lot easier than this in terms of the overlaps. And then for shading, of course, you would do the hollowbah shading wherever there is a crossover. And then for me, I would take that further. I would lift it from that background like that and get some darks down here around the pearl or berry or whatever. You can make so many things there. You can make it into a gemstone. You could make it into a berry. You could make it into that lovely tangle moonberry. You can shade your flux leaves like I do in my moonberry flux tutorial that I will link below, so you can treat your leaves like regular flux leaves or leave them. So many possibilities with this tangle. But I'm not going to spend any more time on this yet. I'm going to put it in my space. So now that you know how to do this, I'm going to do a variation because it get really tiny in here. I think we need to give it some more room. So I'm going to put that tangle here, and I'm going to make the tangle as just one single quadrant, because that way we can show the flux leaves a little better and everything will be more clear. Circle. So I guess we're going to treat this as the quadrant, but that's okay. It's going to be a little stretched, but that's all right. I'm going to put my first berry here and one here. And then that first flux leaf would go like this. Turn my paper. Floppy ear. Before I put the third leaf in, I'm going to put the triangle in. So the triangle would be basically following this line here. And then we're going to put that third leaf behind. And I am not going to put a triangle over there because I think it's too much. Rather, I'm going to do some more flux work. Let's just go crazy with our flux. I'm going to get my O1, and I'm just going to fill in most of this space. I think I'm going to go ahead, so I don't get confused with my fluxes. I'm going to fill in the negative space of this triangle so that I don't put any more flux in there, so that you can see that overlap really well. And then I'm just going to get my fluxes on. Fluxes and orbs, just like I did in my tutorial on moonberry flux. Now we come to the fun part, which is the shading. And once again, I'm going to try to incorporate this brown sienna or brown ochre in here so that we have something similar, right? And we can do our pearls maybe like this, so that those are kind of flowing over into the next section. So let's shade first. Okay, blend that. And in here, I'll do a little bit of shading with my Indian red. Then we want to put some white highlights on our pearls. And we're going to let that dry really well. And then we're going to shade here for I'm going to not shade up there. I think I'm going to shade down here because I don't think we're going to have another Huggins up there. So that would be in light. So let's move on to our last tangle for today. And that is from day 25, the beautiful tangle Onam by Zentangle. It's one of my very first tangles that I learned, and so beautiful to place anywhere. And as Maria says, orbs make everything better, almost. So, I mean, look how beautiful they are up here. So this is just a tangle that is completely made of orbs. And since it's pretty thin, I'm going to go with this space over here that I kind of penciled in already. So I'm going to ink that. And now comes the tangle. So the tangle is, we've already pretty much got where we're going to go with it, and we're going to just stretch it out at either end. There's so many things that you can do with it. I am going to put in the orb for all the tiny or the aura line for the is going to be part of where all of the tiny orbs go in. So the tiny orbs are going to go in this right here. You do want to fill in these little triangular areas that appear when two circles bump up to each other. And however you do that, if you do that at the end or if you do that while you're drawing, that's up to you. I think I'm going to just draw and then I'll finish that off later so that you don't have to sit here and look at me doing that. So we're just going to make our little orbs, perfs is what Maria calls them. It's already very decorative, right? The other orbs that we're going to just mush in there, I'm going to start in the center. And you really want that orb to go from line to line. And the next one, we're going to grow it. Obviously, it's going to get bigger. This is a great exercise in circle drawing. You have to just keep getting bigger. That's more of a smushed orb, but that's okay. That one's kind of sitting on top of that one, but that's okay. And then we're going to do one more set of orbs in here, in these interstices, rather than just filling it in black. And Maria actually fills these orbs. She does make them black. So they're almost like those glass black jet beads. A little bit of a highlight. This one will be larger, obviously. How pretty is that? So decorative. Okay, as you can see, I finished filling in my pearls, and I basically used the same method as I showed you all over on this, and with the exception of the fact that these pearls would be reflecting the light of the different colors around it. So I did go in and add a little bit of Indian red and brown ochre, and then here is my sienna brown. So just go in and give that a hint of color so they are actually not so white or pearly, but rather more like the colors that they are reflecting. And then, of course, at the very end, we're going to give each of them a very bright highlight. And that just makes it super believable. And I also want to point out that I did go ahead and fill in the interstices here black. I didn't make that black perf as Maria does often. It just wasn't working for me. It was getting too busy. It just looked like little highlights. So I went back in there and just colored that in solid, and I'm pretty happy with it now as it is. All right, everyone, that's it. Day 25, we're getting there. As you can see, I've penciled in some more of my crazy huggins for the final days coming up, and then I'll show you how I'm going to treat this at the very end. So I hope you had fun. I hope you're as excited about these new tangles that I am learning and just falling in love with. I would like to say thank you for sharing your time with me today, and to come back for the last few huggins that we will be filling in until the end of our challenge. So enjoy and have fun. See you soon.